When I was in kindergarten, my class did this study called the Me Study. As you can imagine, it was very personalized. We learned about ourselves, our families, our cultures, where we came from, all that good stuff. I remember we'd go on field trips to classmates' homes and learn more about them, their families. We'd even do things characteristic of their households. For example, we went to this one Jewish girl's house and we learned to make challah bread. We kneaded the dough and braided it and everything. By the end of those trips, we would have to write these reports on what we learned, as you could see here. By the end of the unit, we had compiled this cookbook called Brooks Cooks, where every student had their own recipe from their own traditional dishes or culture or whatever. So there was that girl's Jewish challah bread. There was also this girl's Colombian chicken dish. And of course, there was my bulgogi, and much more. At that age especially, the novelty of all our differences was exciting. We would see each other and realize how unique and special we all were. It was a wonderful message for us blossoming 5-year-olds. Now fast forward to much more recently. Only a few months ago, towards the end of this first semester, I was dedicated to what most of my fellow seniors were stressed about: college applications. I did my early decision application to Brown University, but after getting deferred to the regular decision rounds, I panicked a little bit. I ended up applying to a total of 17 colleges. And if you don't know, a lot of the hard work that comes from college applications is through the essays that we have to write. So each college required supplemental essays, and the topics ranged from anything, really. And it was from 100 words to 400 words. Because I had applied to so many colleges, I ended up writing 37 essays. And this was another me study of sorts, because as I wrote, I had to do a lot of self-reflection. But the conclusion I came to wasn't the same as before. In fact, it was quite the opposite. Because the more and more I applied to colleges, the less I felt unique. Throughout the process, I'd go on these different sites to find tips and tricks, whatever would help me to get into college. And I stumbled across this one site called College Confidential. And on it, there were these forum boards where students could post their statistics, their extracurriculars, and just about everything that would be on their application. And they would say whether or not they got accepted or rejected into a college. And this was a really scary place to be because there were a lot of amazing students out there. If you take a look at this student, for example, she applied early action to Stanford University. And if you just take a look at her stats, they're amazing. I mean, that SAT score, 1570, 2800 on SAT 2s, top 1% of her class, a scholarship for $100,000, and then you take a look at the extracurriculars. She's the vice president for her math club, vice president for her computer science club. She does this thing called Relay for Life. I don't know what it is, but it sounds really cool. And she tutors too. And you can't see on this picture, but she explains later that she's a Persian immigrant who came to America, learned English, and even began to tutor ESL. So really, her highlights should look like this. But as I went through these applications, I realized that there's so many more people just like her. These boards are filled with valedictorians, club founders, sports captains, Olympiad winners, and people who do all 4 of those things. At one point, they all just blend together. And that concerned me because I was only reading 10, maybe 20 of these people. But the college that this girl applied to received 47,451 applicants last year. That means the people in the high positions, the people making the big decisions, they were going through thousands of these. And if after 10 applications I was getting bored, I couldn't imagine what 1,000 would be like. Very suddenly, the uniqueness that I learned in kindergarten was being challenged. All the accomplishments and awards and leadership positions and sports teams that I put on my college application, they didn't seem all that special. I was hoping that those things, in addition to being a Korean American living abroad, would help me stand out in the college application pool. But in that group of 47,000 people, I'm just a dime a dozen. So what happened to those lessons that I learned? Were they just myths to help a 5-year-old feel better? Were they just not true? Interestingly, the same process of applying to college that initiated my questioning of my uniqueness, it helped me work through and approach some answers. As I went through writing essays and filling out my applications, I realized that I had fallen into this application trap. I'd begun to define myself solely on the accomplishments and the awards and the good things about my application. I didn't want to show any signs of weakness. I wanted to be the perfect candidate. In so many of the prompts, they asked why I would be a good fit for Elite College A, or what I could do for Elite College B, or how I can make the community of Elite College C even better. And so with that mindset, it was so easy to get caught up in trying to show myself as a great person and really just beg them to accept me. And with that focus, I'm probably indistinguishable from any other Asian American applying to an Ivy League school. But what I was forgetting was the path that I took to get everything that I had presented on my application. All the struggles and failures, all the mistakes that I made that brought me to that place. And that's where I think the uniqueness can come in. Thankfully, I had some prompts to remind me of this thinking. The University of California asked to describe the most significant challenge that I faced so far. And then in an interview with Stanford, I was asked what my biggest failure in life was. Initially, I was hesitant to open up, because these are really tough questions. But after I eventually was honest and I opened up, I was able to explain how when I first came in 8th grade, I took classes with high schoolers. It made me feel a little socially estranged. I was able to explain how at one point in junior year, I was just overwhelmed by the pressures and stresses of everything that I had to do. And I was even able to recount the time earlier this year that I majorly let down so many people, my close friends, my parents, even some teachers. If I were to just stop there, it wouldn't have looked very good to the colleges. In fact, it would have been kind of depressing, because I was this guy trying to do my best, trying to do good, but I just kept failing, and I would keep failing. Thankfully, the story doesn't end there, because from my most significant challenge and from my biggest failure, I could learn and grow a lot. For instance, the incident I mentioned earlier when I let people down. I made mistakes, and I made decisions that I wish I didn't. I wish I had been wiser. But that wishful thinking, it wouldn't change anything. I was, however, able to identify the weaknesses and vulnerabilities that were present in that situation and work to improve on them. After more reflection on other challenges, mostly prompted by college essays, I was able to realize the importance of taking those mistakes one step further, to translate failure into growth, into motivation, and into intention. While the end results, the final actions, the final achievements, they may look quite similar to everyone else, I don't think anyone specifically took the path that I took to get there. Nobody specifically failed in the ways that I did, or grew from the failures in the ways that I did. Now, it wasn't just to reaffirm my 5-year-old feelings of being unique. I did start grappling with this issue because I wanted to stand out and because I wanted to be unique in the college application pool. But now I'm seeing it more as an opportunity for personal understanding. And with this understanding, I know that I can bring something more than just a list of achievements that everyone else has. I can bring intentional living. I can bring a new perspective to the colleges that I'm going to. But now the college applications are over, and I'm trying to think of this in a broader context. I feel that the trap of applications that I mentioned earlier, it can creep so easily into all the rest of the parts of our lives. It's so natural for us to want to portray ourselves in the best light possible, and for us to want to be the perfect candidates, push down and hide any embarrassing or shameful stories. But what I think could help us with that issue of uniqueness, and it would just be more beneficial for us and for our communities, would be to reveal a more comprehensive me study, meaning being more vulnerable about that process of translation that it took to get from failure to growth to now. And maybe the focus should be shifted more onto how we went from our worst to our best. Thank you.